In some states, it's below $3.
We shouldn't get everything we want in the moment.
Crime is a huge vulnerability for Democrats.
It is not a yes or no question.
Democrats get hit on the issue of crime. Joe Biden doubles down on his $3 of gas in many places around the country, which is definitely not true at all. Putin's war, people are fleeing Russia, young men specifically, and also the filibuster. Is it important or is it not? All that and more coming up on this episode of Daily Caller Live. My name is Jobob. Thanks so much for tuning in. Daily Caller Live starts right now.
2, 1.
Here we go!
That might be the only brown guy on earth named Jobob.
That is actually their name, Jobob.
Live from the dingy bunker, completely cut off from the outside world, except for you fine folks. My name is Jobob. This is Daily Caller Live. Thanks so much for tuning in on today. It is September 27th, the year of our Lord 2022. A lot going on around the world. Joe Biden, as we talked about yesterday, said something over the weekend that he said again yesterday that is just blatantly and patently wrong. Also, KJP got hit pretty hard from Peter Doocy on some crime statistics. We'll bring that to you. And also, as promised, we'll kind of dive into this whole Putin's war thing. He is, I would not want to be a young-ish man in Russia at the moment. But let's get into this. This we won't take long on this. There are some days where I get tired out from Joe Biden. He makes the news every single day because, unfortunately, he has to talk. And when he talks, he says things that are dumb. And when he says things that are dumb, we have to bring it to you by law. It's actually in the contract. Our agreement with the FDA, the FCC, the Federal Communications Commission, says that we have to bring you stuff that Joe Biden says that is dumb. I don't know. It's just the rules. I don't make the rules. I just follow them. But Joe Biden, over the weekend, we played this clip yesterday, said that, in 41 states, gas is under $2.99. That is not true at all anywhere. I'm going to play this clip, and then we'll get to what he said yesterday, doubling down on that definitely not true thing. Check it out.
And in 41 states, plus the District of Columbia, the average gasoline price is less than $2.99.
So that's not true. Everybody pointed that out. There were some people that were saying, and I just took their word for it, that gas is actually $1.31 more expensive than when he took office as a national average. So there's that. But nevertheless, Joe Biden, as he does with so many of the stories that he makes up, repeated it yet again. This was a roundtable. I don't know what it was specifically. I would imagine it was some COVID thing because what's his face? Xavier Becerra there, which is he's the Secretary of Health and Human Services. I don't actually know what this thing was, but that guy was sitting next to Joe Biden, so whatever. Joe Biden, hold on, wait a minute. If it was some sort of Health and Human Services thing, because again, right next to Joe Biden was the Health and Human Services Director, Secretary. Why was he talking about gas? I don't know. Remember what's the Amtrak story that he always tells? Angelo Negri, the Amtrak conductor that I see every single day. And while I was vice president, commuting from Delaware, even though Angelo Negri, if you don't know this story, Joe Biden keeps telling this story about him taking Amtrak from Delaware to Washington, D.C. when he was a senator and also as the vice president. And he said, Angelo Negri, how's your mother doing? And while I was vice president, he asked how my mother was doing, except for the guy retired 10 years before Joe Biden was the vice president. Yet he keeps telling that story for some reason, even though everybody and their mother has debunked it thoroughly. But same thing's going on with this gas thing. Watch this from yesterday. Also, if you haven't already, would appreciate if you click the little like button, the little share button. There's a couple thousand of you watching across all of the platforms right now. I see you. I appreciate you being here. I wouldn't mind just clicking the little like button right down here. I believe it's down here. Maybe it's over in this corner. No, I think the share button's in this corner. Anyways, go ahead and do that. It really, really does help us out. Appreciate you doing so. Check out Joe Biden yesterday. This is kind of muffled, difficult to hear, but, is what it is.
With the price of gas down $1.30 since the beginning of the summer, in some states it's below $3.
So the average of any state is not $3. Arthur says In Buffalo, New York, it is 3:45, which is that's not bad. That's not terrible. Kansas 4:30, says JC. Sheila says she found it for $2.89. I would love to see where that is. I would love to get gas there. That is not where. Yeah, JC also asked where is it $2.89? I don't know. Maybe in Alaska, right next to the oil refinery. Who knows? Anyways, so that's that. Joe Biden saying dumb things as is per usual. But I wanted to get to this, and then we'll dive deep into the Vladimir Putin's insanity going on in Russia and all of that sort of stuff. But I thought this was fascinating. Peter Doocy, arch nemesis of the White House, works for Fox News, asks all of the poignant questions to the White House, and they're not necessarily able to answer them. Asked KJP, Karine Jean-Pierre, whether or not Joe Biden thinks big cities are safe. I thought this was pretty funny. And then he brings up something that KJP's predecessor, Jen Psaki, said on MSNBC, because, of course, now she's an MSNBC host. And that goes both sides, by the way. Generally, the transition from White House press secretary is a big-time paid gig on the news network that generally supports your ideas. Who are the people that it doesn't matter. Sean Spicer works at Newsmax now. Kayleigh McEnany, I don't think she's taken a job, but I think she's at Fox a lot. I don't actually know if she works there full time, but generally the progression is White House press secretary to make a bajillions of dollars in New York City on one of those news channels. Anyways, KJP is talking about safe cities. Our city's safe. Check this out.
Just the original question: does President Biden think America's big cities are safe?
It is not a yes or no question. It is very much a question of what has he done? That's how we see the question, is what has he done?
So asking the question, hey, does the president think that cities are safe? And she says, well, it's not the question. It's not a yes or no question. It should be. You should ask. You should just answer that question. Look, we are all aware that the White House press briefing room is a place to, I don't even think you spin anymore. I think you just flat out lie there. Given that that's what that podium seems to be for, I don't like that it is, but that's just what happens to be the case. Just say yes. I absolutely think it's safe to walk around the city. I don't know if that gets any more media play. Actually, I don't think it does. I think if I were there, I would say yes, he absolutely thinks it's safe, especially because he has the Secret Service walking around with him. But she says, it's not a yes or no question. The question is, what has he done? I'm like, okay, well, we can give you a lot of examples. Soft on crime policy is pretty much everywhere in supporting deep blue cities and their city councils and mayors that are just letting people out of jail willy-nilly. John Fetterman, the guy who's running for the Senate in Pennsylvania, said, yeah, we could release about a third of the prisoners in our jails and not really even have a problem. Okay, that guy's endorsed by Joe Biden. So on the account of what has he done, kind of interesting. Anyways, Jen Psaki, now that she's out of the White House press briefing room, is able to say true things now. She wasn't able to say things that are true necessarily while being in that role. But now that she's out, she's allowed to say whatever she wants. And she said something that's accurate. I don't agree with Jen Psaki on policy stuff, but I do believe that she's going to be a more honest broker about how things look, especially from a political angle. And this seems to be an example of that in this MSNBC clip that Peter Doocy asked Karine Jean-Pierre about. Watch this kind of interesting exchange, and then the Jen Psaki clip is after that. Check it out.
Jen Psaki says that crime is a huge vulnerability for Democrats. Why would she say that?
So, again, I can't do electoral politics from here, as you know, but I don't agree with your characterization of what she actually said.
They also know that crime is a huge vulnerability for Democrats. I would say one of the biggest vulnerabilities.
Oh, man. Leon says it's pretty much a yes or no question whether or not the president believes it's safe to walk around in cities. Yeah, she's... should have answered it yes or no. It is the yes or no question. But I thought that was hilarious. Well, I don't agree with your categorization of how Jen Psaki said what she said or what she said. She pretty blatantly right there at the end just said, yeah, I think the biggest vulnerability is crime for Democrats. And the reason she said that is because it is. It's one of the biggest vulnerabilities. You want to talk about the southern border, everybody's all upset about the southern border, and that's true. But in a lot of the country, especially the further north you go and away from the border cities and the border towns, yeah, that's going to be a huge issue in Texas, Nevada, Arizona, New Mexico. Did I say Nevada? Nevada is not a border state, but they probably get enough people going up there. But those states, that's going to be a huge issue. But for the rest of the states, I think crime is going to be a big time issue. And the way that elections work out, and not to get on this whole diatribe about elections, but the way that elections work is pretty much everybody votes based on the city that they live in. And that a lot of times has national implications because remember, everybody is on the same ballot, right? So if your neighborhood is crumbling, if your city is crumbling and there's crime throughout the streets, there's homeless people, there's drug overdoses, all of the stuff going wrong in your city, you get really, really amped to go and vote because your vote obviously makes a difference in that locality. Now, people want to talk about down ballot. Down ballot generally happens with the presidency. You go and vote for the president, and then whoever is down the ballot, you kind of just go there. But in the midterms and special elections specifically, you're voting for the people down on the ballot because generally speaking, if you're voting in the midterms, you probably know more than the average voter and probably pay a little bit more attention. Then that trickles up. The people that wouldn't have shown up otherwise, except for their city is falling apart, now showed up to the polls, vote for their local municipality, and making sure that their streets are cleaned up and the homeless people are off and the crime is taken care of. And then that goes up, and maybe those people end up switching their vote as they go up the ballot, but I don't generally think so. What I'm trying to say here is that bad big blue city policies in a local election could affect and probably will affect your federal seats, your Congress, your senators, and any of the big state elected seats too. So, wow, didn't expect to go down that rabbit hole all that early this morning. So I want to get to this, and I want to spend a little bit of time on it. I think there's a funny comment that I can't bring on because, you know, if you guys would replace some of the F-bombs and all of the other naughty words that you choose, even though they make the comments very, very funny, the only person that gets to enjoy them is me. If maybe you censored a little bit, self-censored, and I'm not censoring you, I'm just saying, you know, this is a family show. We want high schoolers to be able to watch this if they so choose. But I can't bring on some of the more hilarious comments because some of you use some colorful language. So I don't know if you would like to tone it back a little bit. That would be great. Anyways, I want to get into this, Putin's war. We talked a little bit about this last week and also yesterday. So Putin, was it Tuesday, gave this big address talking about how he's not backing out of Ukraine at all. He's doubling down. This was following several really, really, in my opinion, cool images of Zelensky walking into territory and claiming them back for Ukraine. There's a lot of stuff going on here. So Zelensky and the Ukrainian military forces have recaptured a bunch. If you're not paying attention to this all, I know it's kind of like flittered out of the news a little bit, but if you're not paying attention at all, Ukraine has not only defended a lot of the areas, obviously they've lost a couple and it's kind of a hodgepodge of what's going on, but they've retaken some of the areas and some of the geographical locations that the Russian army had taken previously. That didn't make Putin all that excited. He then gave a speech on Tuesday outlining a couple different tactics or plans. First of which, he said that there are going to be elections held in the heavily populated Russian areas of Ukraine. What he's looking to do there is, if those people were to vote to join Russia, He thinks that any attack to retake those areas by Ukraine would be seen as attacking the Russian homeland. Here's the problem. Nobody's buying that those quote-unquote elections are going to be fair. The way they're doing it is they're having a Russian soldier with a gun go to people's doors, knock on them, and say, would you like to vote to join Russia? And I would imagine the overwhelming majority of people are going to say, yeah, I would, regardless of whether or not they think. Nobody in the international community thinks that this is a fair way of doing this. Everybody sees the curveball that Putin is trying to throw, but nevertheless, he's doing it anyway. I think there's 3 major regions along the Ukrainian and Russian border that are Ukrainian-held territories, or were Ukrainian-held territories, that Putin is trying to say are going to try and make the claim that, well, they want to be a part of Russia. And therefore, any attempts for Ukraine to reclaim that land, he thinks he will be able to use to justify, well, they're attacking the homeland and therefore escalate, in his words, using tactical nuclear weapons. So that's wild. That's not going to work on the international community. It remains to be seen how we're going to handle that. There are a lot of people that have been calling this whole situation, Putin's threat to use nuclear weapons, Joe Biden's Cuban Missile Crisis. That's what people are calling it. It seems to be somewhat of a decent comparison. I'm not super thrilled that Joe Biden is in this position. It would be great if somebody else was in this position, not the current president of the United States. But anyways, that's what's going on from that front. But also, I'm breaking my own rules here. I almost said President Putin. Dictator Vladimir Putin, the leader of Russia, also said that Russia was going to be calling up 300,000 conscripts from the Russian reserves and just random Russian young men to go fight in Ukraine. I would imagine that those people are not going to be very thrilled and not going to fight all that hard against Ukrainians who are going to fight way beyond their capacity because they're defending their homeland. Anyways, that was the thing that I wanted to point out. The 300,000 people that are being called up into the Russian military is a fascinating thing to watch. It's been about a week since he's made that statement. And over the past week, and especially over the weekend, you saw a lot of this. This is a video clip of Russians crossing the border into, I believe this is Georgia, but they're also trying to get into Estonia, Lithuania, Georgia. I believe there's a Turkish border that they're trying to cross into too. We talked about it briefly yesterday, but Estonia and Lithuania are saying, hey, no crossing into our border. You're not going to do that here. Maybe we should take notes as the United States. Maybe we should take notes from Lithuania and Estonia and say, hey, we're going to go ahead and shore up our border here. That's not cool. But anyways, check this clip out from a bunch of Russians trying to get out of the country to avoid Putin's call up into the military. This is fascinating. Watch this. Hundreds, if not thousands, literally walking across the border. Suitcases and luggage in tow to again avoid being thrown into battle into Ukraine. Which is a war they're not entirely even sure why they're fighting, by the way. That's, I think, one of the biggest things, too, is there's a lot of these people that are going to get called into the military that are Russians, I don't think understand what they're doing there. Like, why are we here? Somebody pointed out, and I should have brought their name up on here because I thought it was an interesting statement. This would probably be the first time and maybe the only time that people are fleeing a country that isn't being invaded, but they're fleeing the country that is doing the invading. I don't know, weird. But I did find this clip, next clip, pretty dang fascinating. I'm briefly reading this article. I'm seeing if there's anything. Okay, here's what I was talking about. Lithuanian and Estonian officials said this week they are seeking to avoid conscripts and would not be sufficient. That would not be, people seeking to avoid conscription would not be sufficient grounds to gain asylum in their countries. That was from The Guardian. Any other fun little tidbits I will try to peruse through and bring to you. But I wanted to play this video. Now, this is a video from a guy named Anton Gerashenko. I believe I'm pronouncing that right. Just so you know, he's not making any sort of objective claims. He, in his Twitter profile, says he's a Ukrainian patriot, advisor to the Minister of Internal Affairs of Ukraine, official enemy of Russian propaganda. So just so you know, this is not a guy who's trying to be objective, but he put out a video that I thought was fascinating. People speaking in it are speaking in Russian, so maybe I'll read some subtitles while we're going here, especially for those of you who are just listening. But watch, there's people being thrown onto buses, men being thrown onto buses into the military, and then what he's saying, and I don't know this to be entirely true, but it wouldn't be super shocking if it was, he's saying that those buses are driving straight to Ukraine. There's no training, there's no equipment pickup, there's no nothing. You're just going into Ukraine and becoming the cannon fodder that we all unfortunately know that those 300,000 people are going to be. This is not entirely uncommon with Russian strategy. If you remember at all the Syrian debacle, I guess, I don't know really a better term for that, but Russia, unfortunately, for people who live in Russia and are forced in the military, is known for just throwing as many bodies as needed into a conflict until they win. So that's what seems to be happening here. I wanted to play this video because I think some of the imagery is pretty dang interesting, especially given how many people are leaving the country that is doing the invading as opposed to the country that is being invaded. So watch this. Also, if you haven't already, would really appreciate it. There's a couple thousand of you still watching this thing. Click the little like button. Would really, really appreciate it. Or the angry button or the sad button. I don't know. I feel bad for a lot of these 300,000 Russian conscripts that are getting called up because this is one dude's thing. So anyways, whatever makes you feel, maybe give us a comment what you think is going on, what the right thing for those people to do. Maybe let us know in the comment section. Just engaging with the post in any way, shape, or form really, really does help us out. So I'd appreciate you doing that right down there, clicking the little like, share button. Also, we're streaming on Gitter for the starting our second week on Gitter. So hello, people watching on Gitter. Appreciate you tuning in. Without further ado, watch this.
Короче, вот, все, смотрите, менты, сопровождение,
Anyways, look, the police, the convoy, the buses are coming, the police are
менты, вон
leaving.
уезжают. Все, пацаны, вон
That is, the boys are off to war.
4 автобуса. 4.
4 buses. This is a city, I'm not going to try and pronounce that, but a lot of crying, a lot of fighting going on. It looks pretty, dang, yeah, that's pretty sad, man.
Что значит всех
guy
лиц,
got pulled over on the
которые
street.
находятся в запасе,
People who are in
насколько я
reserve, as far as I
знаю.
know, those are the guys
вы не в
being called
запасе?
up.
А кто вам
The
сказал,
guy
что я в
says, you're not in the
запасе?
reserve?
А у вас военного билета
Who told you I'm not in
И
the
что?
reserve?
Что у меня есть?
You don't have a military ID, so what if I have one? Then you're in the reserve. A guy got stopped in his car and was told he needed to go fight in Ukraine. Yeah, this is wild. Gee, some of these guys do not look in shape at all. Even those without any combat or military experience are already being mobilized.
Я никогда не служил
I've never
воинских,
served in the military. I do
проходил
not have
срочную
any
службу,
military service.
не
I do
имею
not have
военной
any
специальности,
military
не имею военной
specialty.
кафедры.
But he was called to join.
Поеду,
They asked,
что
what is your
делать?
plan? He said, I will go. What else is there to do? Or a criminal case. So that's what's being threatened with those 300,000 people being sent into the military. Got a comment that said, wow, no equipment or training. There's an ancient quote. In a nutshell, I won't, yeah. Bottom line is, yeah, there's no equipment, no military training. There's also some videos and pictures, and you could seek these out on your own. But given like rusted guns, like that just don't work. So that's going to be wild. One of the things that I thought was pretty interesting too, somebody brought this up that I'd seen this point. This seems to be entirely the doing of one guy. Vladimir Putin decided that he wanted to go into Ukraine And it's going to be interesting, the butterfly effect of that decision. One dude made a decision that ended up going terribly, by the way. Who is it? Was it David Petraeus? One of our big-time military generals was on TV last week saying the outcome of this war is decided. It's just how long it's going to take for Ukraine to win, especially given the fact that they're continuing to get help from us and freaking not anybody else in Europe. So, what was I saying? Oh, the butterfly effect that's going to be seen throughout history because of Vladimir Putin's decision to decide. And what I mean by that is China is looking at this, trying to size up Taiwan. Now, a naval water invasion is among the most difficult types of invasions. Everybody knows that. Everybody militarily knows that that's going to be the most difficult thing to do if your plan is to take over Taiwan. They're looking at how poorly this is going in Ukraine and possibly reconsidering how they're going to, in their opinion, inevitably take Taiwan. It'll be interesting to see if China just doesn't end up going into Taiwan. And part of that, we find out decades later, was because of how poorly Putin's war in Ukraine went. That'll be really, really interesting. The decision of one dude and how it might affect the rest of the world. Because if China goes into Taiwan, that's going to be chaos. That's going to be chaos. So hopefully they don't. But it'll be interesting to see if they're changing their minds based on how bad this went for Vladimir Putin. Anyways, I want to get to this. This is, I thought, something that should be played. I think a lot of you comment things like Democrats and libtards constantly on this show, but I wanted to bring you a clip from what seems to be a sensible Democrat, a mostly, at least I think, red state, even though they have two Democrat senators, which I think is the same for like Georgia. Georgia is a red state that for some reason has two Democrat senators. Arizona is also one of those places. Generally speaking, they've got a Republican governor. I think the Republicans are probably going to win the governor's race and maybe pick up that Senate seat there in Arizona. But in a lot of ways, Arizona is a conservative state, happens to have two Democrat senators, which means that those two Democrat senators need to be pretty conservative Democrats in order to win votes in what I believe is more conservative state. So I wanted to bring this clip. This is Kristen Sinema? We need to decide on one way to say this name. Kristen. Just figure out one. Just pick one. Just all of the, it doesn't matter how you spell it, with an I before the R, the Y before the R, or after the R. Just say it one way. Senator Sinema from Arizona made a pretty dang reasonable case for not getting rid of the filibuster. Now, I don't believe that she's running right now, so this is not like I'm trying to swing back to the middle for election purposes. So I don't think she's running at all, but she was at a Mitch McConnell Institute, I think, the McConnell Center for Leadership, Scholarship, and Service, or something like that, and was talking about the filibuster and made some pretty reasonable claims, which goes against what the president is saying, what standard Democrats are saying right now. So I know a lot of you people don't like Democrats at all, which, that's fine. That's your prerogative. You're allowed to think that. But I just want to throw out there are some sensible ones. I'm going to play this clip. It's rather long-ish, but I thought it was important, and I thought she did a great job at explaining why the filibuster is so important, especially regarding the Senate, which is said to be the greatest deliberative body in the world. Anyway, check this out. Watch this.
The danger of eliminating the 60-vote threshold is that the Senate becomes the House. And I remind everyone, I left the House and ran for the Senate for a reason. I remember my early years, I served for 6 years in the House of Representatives. And I remember being so frustrated during those 6 years because it felt like every time there was a big bipartisan solution that needed to happen, the Senate just kind of came up with a solution and then gave it to the House and we just ate it. And that's why I ran for the Senate. Yeah. I thought, wait a second, they're doing the work. So when Republicans are in control, they pass a little bit of crazy legislation. And when the Democrats are in control, they pass a little bit of crazy legislation. And the job of the Senate is to cool that passion. You know, there's a saying that the House is the cup of hot tea, and the Senate is the saucer in which you cool that tea. The Senate was designed to be a place that moves slowly, to cool down those passions, to think more strategically and long-term about the legislation before us. But the best thing you can do for your child is to not give them everything they want, right? And that's important to the United States Senate as well. We shouldn't get everything we want in the moment. So not only am I committed to the 60-vote threshold, I have an incredibly unpopular view. I actually think we should restore the 60-vote threshold for the areas in which it has been eliminated already. We should restore it. Yeah, not everyone likes that.
So I'm for it. I'm all about that. I think they did that for judges. And look, this thing goes both ways. You have senators of old saying, well, we don't need the filibuster for this particular piece of legislation. And then they waffle on that. I think a lot of that had to do with getting judges through. Who knows where it started? I just remember Harry Reid saying, wow, we don't need the filibuster for this subset of legislation. And then Mitch McConnell did the same thing with judges. Said, we don't need this for this particular set of legislation. And now a lot of Democrats want to get rid of it altogether. So Kirsten Sinema, I got a comment that said Kirsten. Okay, Kirsten Sinema, senator from Arizona, said, well, not only do I think we need to keep the filibuster, but I think we need to not retroactively, but take a step back and reinstitute the filibuster for places that it was eliminated. I think that seems reasonable. Again, she is not running for re-election at the moment, so I don't think this is some sort of election push to try and get back to the center to win votes. I think she genuinely thinks that, and I think that's good. Regardless of party, if you have a good idea that is going to better the country and better our legislative process, I'm all for it. Anyways, I just wanted to bring that there because there are some people there are some Democrats that people, and I probably disagree with her on a lot of other things, but in this particular situation, I'm all for it. And thanks for saying that, Senator Sinema. That's going to do it for us today. It's been a morning. As you notice, we were a little bit late, as per usual. But if you're watching on any of your social media platforms, appreciate you already doing so. If you haven't already, click the little like button. There's still substantially more of you watching currently than have clicked the little reaction button throughout the entire time. So if you haven't got the chance, I would appreciate you doing that. Really helps us out, really gets us to keep doing the show each and every morning. Also, if you haven't already, would appreciate a follow on any of your social media platforms, Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Getter, anything else, Truth Social. I'm also on that. I'm not really a big Truth Social user, but maybe I should start. We're also streaming on Getter for the second week. Excited. Getter's fun. I don't know if you're on Getter, but you should get on Getter. It's a good time. But you can follow me there. Just type in JOBOB pretty much anywhere you take in social media, you can find me there. Tomorrow, there's a really interesting law in Arizona that I found that I want to bring to you. This is a little teaser for tomorrow. It's funny. It's mostly funny. So tune in tomorrow, same time, same place. We will see you there. Anything newsworthy happens, obviously we'll bring it to you. And with that, see you tomorrow. God bless America.